You are listening to KiCKFLiP Radio.
Imagine for a moment that you've spent, I don't know, the last 20 years of your life building this incredibly vibrant, complex existence in a bustling city.
Right. A whole life.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you didn't just buy a house there. You physically laid the bricks for the neighborhood coffee shop.
We built the community.
You organized the weekend street fairs, you formed these deep, lasting friendships. Maybe you even met your partner there, which actually happens a lot.
Oh, it absolutely does.
So you have this really tangible, emotional stake in the very pavement of this city.
Yeah.
And then one day you wake up, you look at the city council, and you just find yourself wondering, do the people running this place still see me as a founding partner? Or am I just like another line item on a spreadsheet?
Wow. Yeah, that is a profoundly jarring shift in perspective.
It really is.
And what you're describing, that's the exact moment where deep emotional investment collides head-on with cold operational reality. When you've put your soul into a place, being treated like a metric, well, it feels like a betrayal.
It feels like a massive betrayal. And that tension, that specific uncomfortable collision, that is the core mission of our deep dive today.
I'm really looking forward to this one.
Me too. We are exploring the philosophical and emotional tug-of-war at the heart of one of the internet's oldest and, frankly, most fascinating virtual worlds, which is Second Life.
A true pioneer of the internet.
Right. And the central question we're unpacking for you today is basically, this is Second Life, primarily a business that hosts a community. Or is it a community that requires a business to sustain it?
What's fascinating here is that on the surface, those two questions might sound completely identical.
Yeah, they really do.
Like a business hosting a community needing a business. It sounds like pure semantics, Ralph.
Just flipping the words around.
Exactly. But as we dig into the sources we've gathered, we see that how you answer that specific question, it changes absolutely everything about how you manage a massive digital platform.
It changes the entire paradigm.
It does. And Second Life is uniquely positioned for this kind of case study because of its sheer longevity. It has been running for over 2 decades. Over
20 years.
Yeah, which in internet years, that is practically geological time.
Right. Think about what the internet looked like 20 years ago, Like, we were barely past dial-up.
We're talking the era of MySpace, flip phones, early forums.
Exactly.
And this platform has survived massive technological shifts, the rise of mobile computing, multiple hype cycles of virtual reality, and just countless competitors who had like hundreds of millions in funding and still crashed and burned.
Just completely disappeared.
Right. To survive that long, it requires something way more complex than just having good code.
It requires a culture. And we have an incredible stack of sources to guide us through this complexity today.
We really do.
We are looking at a series of these deeply passionate, incredibly detailed essays written by a longtime Second Life resident who goes by the name KiCKFLiP Numbers.
KiCKFLiP's essays are fantastic.
They're so good. And we're placing KiCKFLiP's perspective right alongside official corporate documents from Linden Lab, which is the company that built and currently runs Second Life.
Right.
We've got some fascinating historical reflections from the platform's founder, Philip Rosedale. And crucially, we also have this very detailed counter perspective in our notes that defends Linden Lab's cautious business-first stewardship in the modern era.
Yeah, and I think it is really important to note right up front for you, the listener, that we are not here to do some dry, sterile business analysis of server costs and user acquisition models.
No, nobody wants to listen to a spreadsheet reading.
Right. Nor is this some kind of hit piece on Linden Lab's management. We are not picking a winner here.
Definitely not. We are looking at a highly nuanced exploration of what actually makes a virtual community meaningful in the long run.
Yeah.
Because KiCKFLiP Numbers, whose viewpoint is going to anchor a lot of our discussion today, is very clear on one specific thing. They are not anti-business.
Not at all.
Right. KiCKFLiP knows that physical server racks cost real-world money. They know that software engineers need real-world paychecks, and infrastructure requires massive financial investment.
You can't run a world on good vibes alone.
Exactly. The fear isn't that Linden Lab wants to be financially stable. The fear is that the human side of this massive, messy, beautiful digital world is just, quietly getting lost in the metrics.
And that fear isn't born out of nowhere. It comes from a very real historical precedent.
Yeah, it does.
Because if we want to understand why the residents feel such a deep proprietary sense of ownership today, we have to look backward. We have to look at the culture Linden Lab deliberately fostered way back in the mid-2000s.
Okay, let's unpack this because I was looking through the source documents from that era and I found this strange phrase repeated a few times.
Oh, the Tao.
Yes, it was an internal company doctrine from around 2006 called the Tao of Linden.
It's fascinating.
It honestly sounded almost religious. What exactly was that? I mean, I read parts of it and it sounded less like a corporate handbook and more like a manifesto for some kind of utopian hacker collective.
Well, honestly, that's a very accurate description of the vibe back then.
Really?
Yeah, the Tao of Linden was essentially the guiding philosophy for the early development team, and it was spearheaded by the founder, Philip Rosedale.
Okay.
You have to remember, the internet in 2006 was a wildly different frontier. The language in this document is incredibly idealistic.
It's very flowery.
It is. It explicitly emphasized absolute transparency, assuming good intent at all times, and constantly walking in the resident's shoes. One of the core tenets was literally choose your own work.
Wait, hold on. Choose your own work. How does a functioning tech company actually operate like that?
I know, it sounds crazy now.
Yeah.
But they operated on the belief that if you made everything transparent to your employees, every bug report, every financial metric, every resident complaint, you wouldn't need traditional top-down management telling people what to do. The engineers and designers could just look at what needed doing and naturally gravitate toward the projects that added the most value. It was radically decentralized.
That is wild. There was another tenet I saw that blew my mind. It was, no politics. And then another one that literally said, be humble in the face of our awe-inspiring world.
Be humble.
Yeah. Think about that for a second. Have you ever seen a modern tech company telling its developers to be humble in the face of the software they are coding?
Very rarely.
But it makes sense when you understand what they were actually building.
Exactly. And we should clarify that for the listener, because understanding the mechanics of Second Life is absolutely essential to understanding the psychology of its users.
It's not just a game.
Right. Second Life is not a video game in the traditional sense.
There is no final boss. You don't, win Second Life.
Precisely. In a typical video game, the developers build a massive, beautiful castle, and the players log in to explore that castle.
Right. They run around the pre-built maze.
Yeah, the players are consuming the developer's content. But in Second Life, Linden Lab just built what we call the physics engine.
The physics engine is basically just the math, right?
Yes.
It's the underlying code that says gravity exists here, light reflects off the water like this, and solid objects collide instead of just passing through each other.
Exactly. Linden Lab built the math, and they provided the blank digital land. But the residents built the castle.
The residents built everything.
Every single tree, every skyscraper, every jacket your avatar wears, every line of scripting code that allows a digital car to actually drive, that was all built by a resident.
It's staggering to think about.
They built the retail stores, they built the massive cyberpunk roleplay cities, the art galleries, the jazz nightclubs. The residents didn't just consume the world, they generated the entire culture from scratch. It was framed from day one as a truly collaborative experiment.
Here's the analogy that really crystallized this for me while I was reading Kippy's essays.
Let's hear it.
Imagine the difference between buying a cup of coffee at a giant global mega chain versus physically building the neighborhood coffee shop yourself. In the first scenario, you are just a customer, right? You walk in, hand over $5, get your caffeine, and leave.
Very transactional.
Exactly. And if the coffee is cold, you complain to customer service, or you just go to a different chain tomorrow. It doesn't matter.
You have no loyalty.
Right. But in the second scenario, you literally sourced the beans. You painted the walls of the shop that exact shade of turquoise. You know the names of all the regulars, and you personally host the open mic night every Thursday.
You are invested.
Deeply invested. So why on earth should the management treating those two people use the exact same sterile consumer label? It just doesn't fit.
They absolutely shouldn't. And historically, as the sources point out, Linden Lab didn't.
They didn't used to.
No. The documents highlight this deep, deep nostalgia for an era when Linden Lab employees were highly visible, active residents within the world itself.
They were actually in there.
Yes. They didn't just monitor the platform's health from some sterile dashboard in an office in San Francisco. They maintained avatars. They logged in daily.
Wow.
They attended resident-run events. They hung out in the digital clubs and talked to the creators. They experienced the culture firsthand, on the ground level, alongside the users.
KiCKFLiP talks about this era with such a profound sense of loss.
You can really feel it in the writing.
You really can. There used to be this feeling of proximity. The people writing the code and setting the policies were right there in the digital trenches with the people building the world.
Side by side.
Yeah. Like if you found a bug in the building tools, you might literally bump into the developer and just tell them about it directly.
And from a purely psychological standpoint, that proximity is the ultimate engine for trust.
It really is.
When you, as a resident, believe that the decision makers are actually living in the world they govern, you become remarkably forgiving of their mistakes.
Right.
If a server crashes or a new feature rolls out with massive glitches, the community doesn't riot. They say, well, the devs are in here with us. They feel the pain too. They get it. They'll fix it.
It's a shared struggle. But, I mean, I have to imagine that utopian vision completely shatters when you look at the balance sheet over a 20-year timeline.
Oh, inevitably.
Like, it's easy to be a hacker collective hanging out in digital nightclubs when you have maybe 50,000 users.
Yeah.
But what happens when you scale up to hundreds of thousands or millions?
You hit the nail on the head. That is exactly where the friction starts.
Honeymoon ends.
Right. As a company scales and as a platform ages into its second and third decade, maintaining that intimate communal culture becomes incredibly difficult, if not totally impossible. You inevitably enter the era of optimization.
Which brings us to the present day and to the central conflict of our entire deep dive.
The current reality.
Yeah. The community's perception is that under the current CEO, Brad Oberwager, Linden Lab has executed this significant pivot.
A shift in tone.
Exactly. The conversation coming from the top has just shifted. You don't really hear executives quoting the Tao of Linden anymore.
No, you don't.
Instead, the conversation is heavily dominated by business fundamentals. We're talking about growth metrics, mobile adoption, user acquisition, retention rates, and operational efficiency.
And here is where we must provide the necessary intelligent defense of that shift.
Yep.
Let's put ourselves in the shoes of the leadership team for a minute. Without strict financial discipline, Second Life ceases to exist, period.
The servers literally turn off.
They go dark. A leader in Oberwager's position cannot make multi-million-dollar infrastructure decisions based entirely on feelings or nostalgia or a utopian handbook from 2006.
And KiCKFLiP acknowledges this in the essays. They really do.
They do. They are very fair about it.
They aren't saying Brad Oberwager is a villain, and they aren't saying business fundamentals are somehow evil.
Right.
It's just that there is this palpable fear woven through the community that the platform is increasingly being managed like a businessman's investment portfolio rather than a shared community project.
I hear that. But consider the modern competitive landscape that Linden Lab is currently navigating.
It's brutal out there.
It is. The internet of 2006, where Second Life was basically the only game in town for 3D socializing, is long gone. Today, they are competing for attention against massive social VR platforms.
Wait, let's define that for the listener real quick. When you say social VR platforms, what exactly are we talking about?
We're talking about platforms like VR Chat or Meta's Horizon Worlds.
Okay, yeah.
These are fully immersive, highly funded environments built specifically for modern virtual reality headsets.
Billions of dollars being poured into them.
Literally billions. And on top of that, you have decentralized sandbox platforms built on blockchain technology that promise users true digital ownership.
Right, the Web3 stuff.
Exactly. And then you have these creator-driven streaming ecosystems like Roblox or Fortnite, which have massive, massive audiences and endless funding. The competition for the digital attention span is fiercer than it has ever been.
So you're saying that if Second Life just coasts on its early 2000s hacker collective vibes, it just gets eaten alive?
It becomes irrelevant. To survive in the current market, you need strategic, measurable outcomes. You have to look at the metrics.
You have to track the numbers.
You do. You have to streamline the onboarding process because if a new user logs in today, they expect intuitive controls.
Right. They don't want to read a manual.
Exactly. If they can't figure out how to make their avatar walk within 5 minutes, they close the application and they never, ever come back.
They just go play Roblox.
Yeah. And you have to expand to mobile platforms because that is where the modern consumer lives. You can't rely solely on people sitting at heavy desktop computers anymore.
So from the business perspective, the focus on metrics isn't about ignoring the community at all. It's actually about saving the community from obsolescence.
Precisely. The counter perspective in our sources makes a very compelling, data-driven argument here.
What's the argument?
The fact that Second Life has survived for over 20 years, outliving countless well-funded competitors who crashed and burned, That is actually the strongest possible evidence that this cautious, business-focused stewardship actually works.
The proof is in the pudding.
Exactly. A platform that survives 2 decades in the tech industry is not a mismanaged platform. It is a triumph of operational efficiency.
Okay, I hear that. I really do, and it makes perfect logical sense.
Yeah.
But here is where it gets really interesting and where KiCKFLiP's argument hits incredibly hard. I want to call this the metrics trap.
The metrics trap.
Okay, the argument goes like this: metrics are fantastic at telling us what people are doing on a platform, but they are completely useless at telling us why people are doing it.
That is a crucial distinction. It
Yeah.
really gets to the heart of behavioral economics.
Exactly.
Break down how that applies to Second Life specifically.
Think about it from the perspective of a dashboard in a corporate boardroom.
Okay, looking at the charts.
Let's look at a retention graph. The dashboard shows that user A has logged in for 3 hours a week every single week for the last 5 years.
A very consistent user.
Very. Furthermore, user A consistently pays their premium subscription and their LAN fees right on time.
Perfect.
So the executive looks at that metric and says, success, high retention, stable revenue. Our strategy is working perfectly.
Because on paper, that is the literal definition of a highly engaged, satisfied customer.
Right. But what the metric doesn't show is the human reality behind the screen.
The actual person.
Yes. The metric doesn't show that user A actually feels completely alienated from the platform's leadership. Maybe they built a virtual nightclub a decade ago, right? And they employ 20 other avatars as DJs and hosts, and they just don't want to let their staff down. Or maybe they are absolutely terrified of losing contact with 3 specific friends who live across the globe, and Second Life is the only place they hang out.
So they are logging in out of a sense of obligation or fear of loss,
Yeah.
not out of joy or satisfaction with the platform's direction.
Exactly. The metric registers their presence, it logs the hours, it counts the revenue, but it completely misses their eroding trust.
It misses the emotional context.
It totally misses it. And that brings us to this really deep philosophical question. If you are only managing what you can measure, what happens to the things you can't measure?
They fall by the wayside.
They do. Like, can you put belonging in a spreadsheet?
No.
How do you measure resident goodwill? How do you quantify empathy? You can't.
You really can't. And this highlights a fundamental limit of data analytics in general.
Right.
Dashboards are inherently retrospective. They only show you what has already happened.
They're looking in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. By the time user churn, which is a highly measurable metric, basically the rate at which people quit and cancel subscriptions.
The ultimate bad metric.
Right. By the time that metric actually spikes on a spreadsheet, the cultural goodwill that prevented that churn has already been dead for months or even years.
Yes. When a company becomes hyperfixated on the things that can be measured, like daily active users or mobile app downloads or marketplace transaction volume, they naturally, almost unconsciously, start to deprioritize the things that cannot be measured.
It's human nature to focus on the target you can see.
But KiCKFLiP's entire point is that in a platform like Second Life, those unmeasurable, messy human things are the actual glue holding the entire digital universe together.
It's the classic business dilemma, right? What gets measured gets managed.
Exactly.
If you're only managing for user acquisition and retention, you might inadvertently bulldoze the nuanced social contracts that make the space worth inhabiting in the first place.
You crush the culture.
And nowhere, absolutely nowhere, is this philosophical clash between human empathy and business metrics more visibly painful than in how the platform polices itself.
Oh, man. Governance.
It's a huge issue.
If you really want to see where the rubber meets the road on the concept of trust, you look at how a community handles its bad actors.
How it protects its citizens.
Exactly. KiCKFLiP's essays dedicate a massive amount of real estate to this issue, and the frustration is just radiating off the page.
You can feel the anger.
You really can. The core concern from the community is that residents feel Linden Lab takes a deeply hands-off approach to serial harassers, griefers, and community disruptors.
For the listener who might not be familiar with gaming terminology, let's define griefers real quick.
Good idea.
These aren't just people having a regular argument or a disagreement. Griefers are users whose primary deliberate goal is to cause disruption or relentlessly harass other users just for the psychological thrill of it.
Right. They're digital vandals. And KiCKFLiP argues that the historical context here is kind of a double-edged sword.
How so?
Well, Second Life was built on resident autonomy, right? The tools provided to users, like the ability to mute someone, block their avatar, or ban them from your specific parcel of virtual land, those were designed to let residents self-govern their own spaces.
Decentralized policing.
Yeah, the philosophy was basically, we give you the tools, you build your own community rules.
Which sounds incredibly empowering in theory.
Yeah.
It aligns perfectly with that Tao of Linden ethos of decentralization we talked about.
But in practice, KiCKFLiP argues that when a platform relies almost entirely on the victims to police the space by playing an endless game of whack-a-mole with a mute button, it creates a climate of absolute exhaustion.
I can imagine.
Imagine a serial manipulator or a dedicated group of griefers bouncing from community to community. They show up at a virtual poetry reading and spam the chat.
Ruining the event.
Right. The organizer bans them. The next day, the griefer makes a brand new account and shows up at a role-play sim to harass the players. The organizer bans them.
And the cycle just repeats.
Exactly. The burden of enforcement is entirely on the unpaid resident.
And the community leaders just burn out.
They get so tired. They feel like the platform has completely abandoned them. As KiCKFLiP implies, it feels like you are paying premium rent to a landlord. And there are people breaking into the lobby every single night. And a landlord's response is just, well, I gave you a lock for your individual apartment door, so just lock it.
I hear the deep frustration there. I really do. And on a human level, it is completely valid to be angry about that.
It's exhausting.
But as your expert guide here, I have to step in and push back on behalf of the operational reality.
Okay, let's hear the other side.
We have to look at the counter perspective, because the reality of governance in a virtual world with a real money economy is staggeringly complex.
How complex are we talking?
It is not as simple as just banning the bad guy.
Okay, walk me through that, because to a resident, it seems obvious. If someone is clearly harassing people, why can't governance just hit the delete button on their account and be done with it?
To understand that, we have to introduce the economic incentive dilemma from our sources. Let's really get into the mechanics of the Second Life economy.
Okay.
Second Life has its own currency, the Linden dollar, which is directly exchangeable for actual U.S. dollars.
Real money.
Real money. And more importantly, digital land in Second Life is hosted on physical servers that cost real money to run.
Right. This is what residents call paying tier.
Exactly. Tier is essentially real-world server hosting fees paid directly to Linden Lab.
Okay.
Now, some users are what we call estate owners. An estate owner isn't just someone with a fancy digital title. They are essentially a massive digital landlord.
They own a lot of land.
A huge amount.
Yeah.
They might pay Linden Lab thousands of actual U.S. dollars every single month to rent dozens of server regions.
Oh, thousands a month.
Yes. They then subdivide that digital land and sublease it to hundreds of other players who want a house or a storefront but can't afford a full server themselves.
Okay, I'm following the money flow. They are essentially running a real estate business inside the game.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So imagine this scenario. Governance receives a flurry of harassment complaints against a specific resident.
Okay.
In a normal video game, like World of Warcraft or something, the admins review the chat logs, they confirm the harassment, they ban the player, and that's the end of the story.
The bad guy is gone.
Right. But in Second Life, what if the person accused of harassment happens to be one of those massive estate owners?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Exactly. If Linden Lab aggressively bans that estate owner, their account is locked permanently. Because they can no longer pay their tier, those dozens of servers are taken offline instantly.
They just vanish.
Yes. And what happens next? Hundreds of completely innocent renters lose their virtual homes with absolutely no warning.
Oh, my God.
The creators who sell digital clothing to the people living on that estate lose their primary customer base overnight.
The economy crashes.
The DJs who were scheduled to perform at a digital nightclub on that estate lose their gigs and their income. The virtual real estate agents who manage the subleases are suddenly out of a job.
It's like a massive cascading economic collapse triggered by a single governance action.
Precisely. A single ban can bankrupt innocent bystanders in the real world.
That is heavy.
Therefore, what KiCKFLiP and the frustrated residents perceive as excessive caution or corporate inaction or just a lack of empathy on the part of Linden Lab, the executives in the boardroom might view that exact same situation as deliberate, necessary risk management.
They are trying to avoid detonating an economic bomb.
Exactly. They have to weigh the cost of the harassment against the cost of destroying hundreds of innocent users' livelihoods.
Let me try out an analogy here, because this really reminds me of the city metaphor we started with. It's like a town where the owner of the local factory is caught dumping toxic waste into the river.
Okay.
The citizens are furious. They are marching on City Hall, demanding the mayor arrest the factory owner and shut the place down immediately to save the environment.
A very natural, justified reaction.
Right. But the city council is sitting there sweating because they know that the factory employs half the town. If they shut down the factory today, thousands of people lose their jobs tomorrow. The local diner goes out of business because there are no factory workers buying lunch. The schools lose their tax funding.
The town dies.
Exactly. So the council moves agonizingly slowly. They launch investigations. They issue minor fines. They try to find a solution that doesn't destroy the town to save the river.
Right.
But to the citizens breathing the toxic fumes, it just looks like the politicians are corrupt or that they care more about corporate taxes than human health.
That is a brilliant analogy. It perfectly captures the tension between governance and economics. And it leads directly into another major point in the counter-perspective document, which we'll call the visibility problem or the perception gap.
Right, because even if Linden Lab is investigating the toxic waste, the citizens rarely get to see it.
Exactly. Let's say Linden Lab is taking action. Let's say they are investigating. Due to strict real-world privacy laws, legal liabilities, and standard corporate policy, governance departments cannot publicly announce disciplinary actions.
They can't name and shame.
No, it's an immense legal risk.
It's like a secret court system.
That's a great way to put it. Explain how that secret court feels to the everyday resident.
Okay, imagine you are the victim of harassment. You do everything right. You gather the evidence, you take screenshots, you submit the detailed report.
Now follow the rules.
Yes. And you essentially send your evidence into a secret court. You are never allowed to attend the trial. You are never told if a verdict was reached. You are never told what the sentence was.
Total silence.
The only way you can guess the outcome is if you happen to bump into the criminal on the virtual street the next day. It is an absolute black hole of information.
That has to be maddening.
KiCKFLiP points this out brilliantly in the essays. You might see the harasser's avatar disappear for a few days, but you have no idea if they were officially banned by Linden Lab or if they just, went on a real-life vacation to Florida.
And how does that ambiguity affect the community's psychology over time?
It is devastating because people don't just need systems to function. They need confidence that the systems function.
Trust in the system.
Exactly. When you operate in an information vacuum, human nature just fills that vacuum with conspiracy theories, bitterness, and mistrust.
And this erosion of trust, driven by opaque governance, the secret court system, and a hyper-focus on measurable metrics. It creates a compounding effect over time.
There's a snowball effect.
It fundamentally alters the psychological contract between the residents and the company. As the sources point out, we are seeing a shift from a paradigm of collaborators to a paradigm of customers.
Yes. And I really want to dive deep into this because this shift is the emotional core of our entire deep dive today.
It's the crux of KiCKFLiP's argument.
It really is. It's what KiCKFLiP is so desperately trying to articulate. Think about your own life, listener. When you feel like a stakeholder in a shared project, when you feel like a collaborator, you fight for the platform.
You defend it.
Yes. If something breaks, you roll up your sleeves, you write detailed bug reports, you spend 3 hours helping a confused new user figure out the camera controls just out of the goodness of your heart.
Because you care.
Right. You defend the platform when outsiders make fun of it. You have grace for the developers when they mess up because you feel like you are on the same team. You own a piece of this city.
That is the collaborative mindset in a nutshell. But what happens when that trust finally erodes? When you feel like you've been downgraded to a customer?
When you feel like a customer, your relationship becomes purely transactional.
Money for a service.
Exactly. If the product is good, you pay your subscription fee. But the second the product breaks, or the second the governance team ignores your safety concerns, you don't fight for the platform anymore. Why would you?
You have no skin in the game.
You just file a bitter complaint with customer service, cancel your subscription, and take your money to a competitor. The pain of that downgrade from a respected founding partner to a line-item consumer is exactly what is driving these passionate resident essays.
And if we look at the demographic realities outlined in our research, the cost of losing those deeply invested collaborative leaders is an existential threat to Linden Lab.
It's a huge danger.
Second Life has an aging population. It's a 20-year-old platform. Many of the people who built the foundational culture of this world, the ones who wrote the scripts, built the cities, and established the social norms they are moving on for real-life reasons.
Right. People get new demanding jobs, they have kids, they face health issues. time comes for us all, even in the metaverse.
Exactly. It is an unavoidable demographic reality that the pioneer generation will eventually age out. Therefore, retaining the veteran community leaders who are still active becomes absolutely paramount.
You can't afford to lose them.
And this is where the metrics fail again. If an everyday casual user quits, they leave a small gap. You lose one monthly subscription fee.
A blip on the radar.
But what happens if a veteran event organizer loses trust? What if a community mentor who runs a massive orientation hub for new users decides the secret court system is just too exhausting and they walk away?
They don't just quit alone.
Never. They take entire social networks with them.
It's a massive ripple effect.
They take the gravity that holds dozens or hundreds of other users in the platform. If the DJ leaves, the crowd leaves. Trust is earned agonizingly slowly over years of positive interaction, but it is lost gradually through 1,000 tiny cuts of feeling unheard or unappreciated.
And this brings up a vital point that KiCKFLiP makes, which I think is a brilliant reframing of the entire situation.
Reframing.
If you are sitting in the C-suite at Linden Lab, or if you are a community manager, it must be exhausting to constantly read essays and forum posts from residents complaining about the platform.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
It probably feels like a constant barrage of hostility. You're working hard to keep the servers running, and all you hear is, governance is broken, the metrics are ruining the soul of the game, you guys don't care anymore.
It would be very, very easy for leadership to become defensive and just dismiss the critics as a vocal, toxic minority.
Right. But KiCKFLiP says, no, you have to look deeper. Complaining isn't hostility. Complaining is proof of love.
That is a profound insight into community management. Break that down for us.
Think about human nature. People only spend hours writing thousands of words of critique about things they deeply, passionately care about.
You don't write an essay about a coffee shop you don't care about.
Exactly. If these residents had truly given up on Second Life, if they truly viewed it as just a broken product they were paying a monthly fee for, they wouldn't be writing essays.
They wouldn't bother.
They wouldn't be organizing town halls. They would just silently uninstall the software and never look back. The noise, the friction, the heated debate. That is the sound of a community that still believes the world is worth fighting for.
It's a sign of life.
Yes. Silence. A totally quiet forum. That is what Linden Lab should actually be terrified of. Because silence means the collaborators have officially become customers and the customers have walked out the door.
Which brings us to the grand synthesis of this entire complex dynamic.
Let's bring it all together.
We have spent this deep dive exploring two incredibly valid yet seemingly opposing perspectives. On one side, we have the expert, corporate necessity for cold, hard sustainability.
The business reality.
You absolutely need metrics, you need revenue, you need strategic growth, and mobile expansion to keep the servers running in a viciously competitive market.
And on the other side, you have KiCKFLiP's perspective, the desperate need to preserve the warm, messy, empathetic, deeply human culture that actually makes the platform worth logging into in the first place. So are these two perspectives actually mutually exclusive? Must one destroy the other?
In the sources, we see this recurring tension framed as two fundamentally different questions being asked simultaneously by different groups of people. Linden Lab, looking at the balance sheet and the competitive landscape, is asking, how do we keep Second Life alive for another 20 years?
Meanwhile, the veteran residents, looking at their communities and their history, are asking, what made Second Life worth staying in for the first 20 years?
They're asking different things entirely. One is a question of structural survival, the other is a question of intrinsic value. But the fascinating conclusion drawn in the source material is that these questions are entirely interdependent. You cannot answer one without answering the other.
Yes. KiCKFLiP's ultimate thesis is that compassion and business are not enemies. Empathy isn't some fluffy, optional add-on that you sprinkle over the community management department only when quarterly revenue is up.
No, it's core to the mission.
Empathy is a business strategy.
I love that phrasing. Empathy as a business strategy. Let's unpack the actual mechanics of that. How does empathy translate into operational sustainability? Give me the business case for empathy.
It goes right back to the unmeasurable metrics we talked about earlier. If a resident feels genuinely respected by leadership, they stay engaged longer.
Which reduces churn.
Exactly, that reduces churn. If a digital creator feels supported and protected by governance from intellectual property theft or harassment, they are incentivized to make more content.
Which drives the virtual economy and increases transaction fees.
Boom. If a community leader feels appreciated, they keep logging in to organize the events that give new users a reason to stick around past the tutorial.
It creates a virtuous cycle.
You might not be able to track feeling appreciated on a dashboard, but you absolutely can track the downstream economic benefits of a highly motivated, deeply loyal user base.
I completely agree. Community understanding should never be viewed as a distraction from operational efficiency. It is the very foundation of it.
It's the bedrock.
As the sources point out so eloquently, numbers explain behavior, but conversations explain motivation.
Wow, that's good.
You need the data analytics to tell you where the leaks are in the hull of the ship, but you need the human conversation to tell you why the crew is drilling holes in the ship to begin with.
That is exactly it. Moving forward, Second Life cannot survive by picking just one of these paths. If leadership leans entirely into the idealistic, community-first Tao of Linden approach and ignores market realities.
If they refuse to optimize onboarding or build a mobile app,
Right. If they ignore all that, they go bankrupt. The servers shut down and the community dies anyway.
but if they lean entirely into the sterile, metric-driven business optimization approach,
Yeah.
if they treat every resident as just a monthly recurring revenue stream,
They hollow out the soul of the platform.
they might technically keep the servers running, but it will just be a beautiful, empty digital mall that no one wants to visit.
It requires a synthesis. It requires the strict, unsentimental business perspective to ensure the infrastructure survives the next 2 decades, paired perfectly with the deeply human, emotionally intelligent community perspective to ensure the virtual world remains a place worth inhabiting.
A very delicate balance.
The management team must constantly remind themselves that the residents are not just consumers of a service, they are the co-authors of the reality being sold.
And what a massive, unprecedented, and delicate challenge that is.
Truly. Thank you so much for coming along with us, listener, on this deep dive into the complex, beautiful, and yes, sometimes incredibly frustrating ecosystem of Second Life.
It's a fascinating world.
It is a masterclass in the delicate balance between corporate reality and human connection.
It really is. And the lessons here extend far beyond the borders of any virtual world.
Absolutely. I want you to think about this in your own life. Think about the online communities you participate in. Think about the social media platforms you scroll through, or even the digital workspaces, the Slack channels, and the Zoom rooms you log into every single day.
Everywhere you interact online.
Ask yourself, are the people running those platforms treating you as a collaborator? Or are they treating you as a customer?
A vital distinction.
And more importantly, how does that subtle shift in label change your loyalty, your behavior, and your willingness to invest your precious time?
Thanks for listening to KiCKFLiP Radio.